Today we're going to take a look at Jay's office tank. What's going on, guys? Devin from ReefDudes. I'm here with Jay from Ecotech Marine, checking out his gorgeous office tank.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you, Devin.
You're welcome, you're welcome. It is an awesome little tank. So what do you got running from here? Obviously you're running the Ecotechs, given that you work for Ecotech Marine.
Yeah, I'm a little bit biased equipment-wise. I would imagine, though, that if I did not work for Ecotech, I would probably be using Ecotech equipment at this point. I have a lot of experience with it, and it has been a very positive experience as a user, not just because I'm paid to say that, but I legitimately, I've made it through 3-4 generations, actually. I think I've used all 4 generations of Radions.
I'm only at 3 and 4, but
3 and 4?
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. They're my favorite ones I've ever had, and not just because I'm sitting beside you, because I had them all before I ever met you. But
this is true, absolutely.
Yep. So the tank is lit by 4 XR15s. Excellent choice, one of my favorite lights. Now, what do you got for going on for flow in here?
So I actually have a MP40 on this end of the tank, and I would run another MP40 on the other end of the tank, except that because that tank's exposed to the door, I didn't want anything that people would bump into.
That makes sense.
Beyond that, the rest of the flow is provided by the return pump, which is the Vectra, and then I have a couple of Neros in here because they're very discreet on the back wall, where having visible cords is not really an eyesore because it blends into the background. Yeah, so there's quite a lot of flow overall in the system between the return pump and then the circulation pumps I have running. I couldn't tell you exactly, without looking up the programs, what the total turnover, what the X is, but I'm guessing it's well in excess of 35, 40X.
Yeah, it's a good chunk of flow. But it is distributed through multiple pumps, so it's kind of diversified flow everywhere, which is always a good thing and makes corals happy.
Yeah, and I started with less. I started with 1 Nero and 1 MP40, and I've since added the other Neros. And the reason is because the whole tank as a living system, as it grows, needs more.
Yeah.
The same is true of the lighting. For instance, my previous tank was a innovative SR80, so similar dimensions, but shallower. So 80 gallons as opposed to 130 gallons. This is a WaterBox 130.4. And on that system, I started with 3 XR15s, and by the time it was chock full of SPS, I was up to 5, just because that's what you need. You need more lighting, you know, to cover all of that area, especially as it grows and you start to get shadowing.
No, exactly. So it's ever-evolving ecosystem. Now, one really cool thing that always catches my eye in your tank is you have these really cool floating shelves on both sides. And that is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I like to use the Vortec magnets, of which we have some around. And using that combined with the Nios aquascaping cement, I simply attach rock work to those and then secure them with magnets on the other side. So then I'm able to build these shelves and structures which jut off of the back wall, which kind of gives me, you know, this effect with the rock, which I've done it a couple times now. I like to do it. So.
No, it's a very cool effect, and nice strong magnets gets the job done.
Yeah, and obviously the water supports some of that weight, so you can get away with it. Out of water, I'm not sure that they would be quite strong enough to hold them in place, but with the water helping support, that works well. It's also good for things like, I found Cephastia really like to grow, corals that like to grow on the underside, because in a lot of places when you have underside, also it's shielded from flow, but when you have structures which are very open like this, then you're able to utilize a lot of that even area on the underside to grow certain corals.
That's a very good point. Like, you do have corals off the bottom of your rock, and it's very open and flowy, which is awesome for flow, and it's awesome for kind of coral real estate as well. Let it grow in.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy with this tank. It's been an interesting experience. There's been some challenges, good and bad, with this tank. Obviously, my last tank, suffered a horrible defeat, as they do occasionally while I was away. And truth be told, though, I was a little bit excited about that because that gave me the opportunity to have an all-new tank. A lot of the coral, actually, frags of it came from that tank as well, because I'd given pieces to people and other tanks around the office, and then I was able to bring them back in and regrow them. But it also gave me an opportunity not to include a number of corals which were extremely fast growing, and while they were great when I was more novice, they quickly take up a lot of real estate in your tank. So the focus now was to try with some that I hadn't kept before, and also with some of the slightly harder to keep acros that I didn't have the last time around. So.
Now, I am a huge fan of mixed reef, and you were the extreme of that, with everything from LPS to 4 clams, including this massive one, and tons of acros in there.
Yeah, and actually the challenges go a little bit to that too, is that when we broke down our 350, because we actually had an issue with the sump, that clam was in our 350, so now it's here, and it has been doing very well, except as we were just sat here, I noticed this little guy was having a little nip at the mantle, which might be why it's a little bit receded. So we have to keep an eye on him and make sure that he doesn't wreak too much havoc on that. But yeah, I'm a big fan. I admittedly subscribe a little bit to the Sanjay approach, which is to put in a lot of stuff, move it around, see where it does well. Not everything's going to survive, but I've had very good luck, actually, where mostly what's in here does well. And I attribute that a lot to just, as you're in the hobby for a while, you start to get a good feel for where things are going to do well in terms of flow and lighting, and I've kind of subscribed to that. So.
Nice. Awesome. Well, whatever you're doing is working well, because everything's growing in. It's looking beautiful. So what do you have under the hood? Kind of what's running it for filtration? Everything else?
let's get in there and take a look. This is looking a lot prettier than it was earlier today, even, and that's thanks in good part to you helping me get it back under control, because I set it up very cleanly, and then, as is the way with reef tanks, slowly adding in bits of equipment, moving stuff around, etc., and your cordage, your wires, your tubing starts to get a little bit displaced. But what we have here is your standard WaterBox sump, and I left the filter socks in. If this tank was anywhere but here in the office where we get filter socks cleaned, I would take them out and just rely on the filter roller. As it is, they're a good pre-filter and a good place to store things like my turkey baster. And realistically, there's no reason not to use them, since removing them would just mean that I need to cut out that baffle, basically. So left those in there, but really the thing that's polishing the water really well is that Claracy roller. Because I don't have it in the main compartment, I have it in the back. It's actually running off of an S1, so I actually have it plumbed into an S1 that's behind it, and that pumps water into it, and the Claracy filters everything out. Yeah, so we have a Nios 160 skimmer in there, and then in the back, torque reactor, and then the return pump. Recently, I've added a Versa, which is feeding phytoplankton. Talked about that earlier. Over here, I have my pump controllers, including a battery backup.
Nice. And what is your battery backup hooked up to?
The MP40.
Okay.
Because the most bang for your buck that you're going to get with a battery backup is that in-tank circulation. Because the main thing that you want to keep going is oxygen exchange. So if we lose power, the water level will drop slightly because the return pump will be off, but the MP40 will keep water circulating, so you'll get oxygen exchange in the tank. The second most important thing after that is going to be your heater. Obviously, it'll take longer for that temperature to fluctuate than it will for your tank to run out of oxygen. So first thing to watch out for is your MP40, so that's what the battery backup's hooked to. That would hopefully give me the hours that I need to then get a generator going to run the rest of the system, particularly the heater and then the return pump. Over here, I'm using a Aquametic doser. I just dose alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, dialed it in with test kits. We test it periodically. Everything stays fairly stable at this point.
Do you use any specific brand of dosing supplements or just the standard bulk stuff?
Largely we use the Nios because that's what we distribute. We have it on hand. I haven't noticed a huge difference. I will admit that liquid supplements like ESV or salts like ESV are typically easier to work with because they're already ready to go, but they're also generally more costly by volume than mixing your own. That's basically it.
Okay.
Torque reactor, I typically run. I typically either run carbon or phosphate remover, usually one or the other. Mostly carbon.
Okay. How often do you change your carbon?
Maybe every 2 weeks or so.
Yep. Do you dose anything else to the tank aside from calcium, milk, and magnesium?
At this point, not really. Periodically, I add in some trace elements, but it's not religious. It is something that, with the precision and the availability of the VersaPump and being able to tie it into the system, that this area will probably look different the next time you come, and I'll probably be running 8 dosing pumps, 4 for trace elements and food, and then the others for auto top off and the alkalinity, calcium, magnesium.
Nice. So how about for maintenance wise? How often does it get water changes and that type of stuff?
That is typically done weekly. Not much, usually 5 to 10 gallons at a time, but just enough to keep that water cycling, keep it fresh. The filtration under here is pretty extreme for the size of the tank, so it keeps, I think it does a fairly good job of keeping the water very clean.
Yep. Excellent. And then what do you keep your parameters at in the tank?
Typically in the general recommended range. Alkalinity ideally between 8 and 9. I think actually looking at it today, it's up at 10, and I'm seeing a little bit of some of the LPS not looking so happy, and that could very well be why, because they seem to get less happy at the higher alk ranges. Calcium 470 roughly, and then magnesium is in the mid 1300s, probably 1350 to 1370, somewhere in there.
So pretty standard range of stuff, and it's working well for you. Everything's looking awesome in the tank.
Yeah, alkalinity is certainly one of the ones that's, I feel like, is one of the hardest on a mixed reef, or one of the things to pay most attention to, because of the fact that typically you can go fairly high, particularly if the pH is high when you're going with SPS. Soft corals like that less, so you can't run the tank as hot for SPS when you have a mixed reef. And you just have to be a bit more patient with that growth rate. But yeah, I mean, very, very standard parameters, nothing terribly fancy there.
That is kind of why they say mixed reefs are a little bit harder. But I don't know. I don't think I could have it any other way. I couldn't can't discriminate against coral, right? If it's beautiful, it's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Well, the tank is looking beautiful, Jay. So thanks so much for giving us a quick tour and letting us check it out.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.